Agfa Photo APX400. Is it anything like Tri-X? I wanted to do some more film comparisons to Tri-X like I began earlier in the year. But to keep things consistent, rather than do them every now and then, I went ahead and got 49 different film stocks, everything I could get in 35mm from B&H and Freestyle. So unless they were out of stock, I got a roll of it. Now, if this part of the video seems familiar, it's because I'm using this portion of the video for all 49 of them rather than record it 49 times. So if you want to skip ahead to the H&D curves or the prints, time codes are right over here. For those of you that haven't seen this part of the video before, here's what I've done. So I wanted to use each film with the exact same shot, which is a headshot of me with a Kodak Gray Card Plus, which happens to have a red, blue, and green patch, a cyan, magenta, yellow patch, and then a dark and a neutral flesh tone. Then, with those shots taken, I bracketed every shot in third of a stop so that we can make sure we have a negative of equal shadow density to the base target film of Tri-X. Now, the reason I use Tri-X is because it's just been around for a long time and it's a very popular film. So it's a good base film to compare everything to. Then, once everything was developed, which was developed in D-76 at stock for the manufacturer's recommended time, I printed everything on Ilford using the exact same aperture, contrast settings, developer, and everything. The only thing I changed was my exposure time, and that was to make sure that I compensated for any base fog variation from one film stock to another. Other than that, everything was left the same so that we can have a comparison of just the qualities of the film. Now, there's going to be some differences in contrast, especially on the high end, and that's because the manufacturers getting their development time may not have used the same target that Kodak used for Tri-X. And that's okay. We're not looking at the overall contrast for everything. What we're really looking at is grain characteristics, tonality, how the film treats the shadows versus the highlights, that sort of thing. And we're looking at spectral sensitivity, thus the Gray Card Plus, rather than just a regular Gray Card. So we're going to go ahead and look at H&D curves, which if you saw one of my earlier videos on sensitometry, I like to use pen and paper and make my graphs. However, my wife was really ready to make sure I was done with this project. So she put everything into a spreadsheet for you all. So even though I don't like them, I want to show them to you thanks to her. Then we're going to go ahead and look at the prints side by side with the same print made from Tri-X. And from there, you can decide if you like the film and if you want to go and use it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the curves, and then we'll go to the prints. As all the others, we have Tri-X in blue, and here we have in red APX400. The toe, very similar to the Tri-X, so I'd expect our shadow performance to be fairly even. But then we have sort of a slow, graceful shouldering at the top. Basically, where Tri-X valleys, the APX peaks. So we can maybe have a little bit better separation in the mid-tones, and then maybe a little less separation in tones in the highlights. But since the curves are fairly close, I would say the differences are probably going to be very subtle. So let's take a look at the prints and see if there are actually any real distinctions. Here we have our APX400 and our Tri-X400. So nice side-to-side comparison of these two films. I'll say that we don't have Agfa very common here in the US. I realize it's probably a lot more common in the EU, which is a shame because looking at these prints side by side, it a really nice looking film. Our tonal gradation is actually pretty close between the two. We have really good whites, really good shadows, nice midtones. Our color representation here is pretty much identical between the two. We're really not going to see much of a difference between these on the large scale. We're going to need to go much closer here in a moment to see if there's any difference on the small scale, the macro. But overall, just first impression, excellent film. This was actually shot at 400 as well, so full film speed from both stock D-76. Turned out, looks like a pretty solid performance for each one. Okay, let's get down in a little closer and see what this grain structure and fine detail look like. Alright, so once we get in closer, we can start to see that the grain of the Agfa 400 is a little bit more pronounced than Tri-X. Not nearly as much as I would say the Kentmere 400 or some of the other 400 speed films we've looked at. It's still pretty fine grain for a 400, but next to Tri-X, it's definitely a little bit more noticeable, but still not bad. Here with the shadowed shoulder, we can see we are still getting nice detail in the fuzzy edge along the silhouetted shoulder against the background. The smooth tone of the background does show that grain just a little bit more pronounced than the Tri-X, but it is slight. We're not going to really give it a big ding or anything because of that. It's just next to it, it's a little more noticeable. Without the Tri-X next to it, I don't think you'd really even notice much. Here on the lighted side, we're getting nice sharp detail. We're getting really crisp edges to that ribbing of the t-shirt around the collar. We can really see the difference there. We can still see the texture of the fabric of the shirt and the stitching down the shoulder, all that sort of stuff. It comes out very nice, very clear, and really good performance. And here with the lighted side of my face, we are getting good detail in the skin. Pores are coming through, eyebrow hairs nice and sharp. All the sorts of stuff you would expect from a good top quality film. Tonal range, I would say, is a little bit more like the Ilford films and then Kodak. By that I mean we're not seeing as much separation in the high tones as we are with the Kodak. You can see that here, the highlight of my bridge and the highlight on my forehead kind of blur with the tone on either side. It doesn't separate much, even though they are still pretty much identical to the Tri-X for that brightest highlight. So the Tri-X is separating those tones into separate tones much clearer. But I feel like Ilford does the same thing. It's just a way that the curve is attenuated for that. Other than that, this is a great film. 400 speed, I got full box speed out of it. I'll have to look and see if this is available in larger formats, medium format, stuff like that. Because if it is, if the price is good, it'd be definitely a film worth using more often. Alright, that's going to do it for this film. I appreciate you watching. If you'd like to help support this channel so we can investigate more films, papers, toners, and all that sort of stuff, then you can go to my Patreon or my merchandise pages. They're linked down at the bottom. You can join the Discord if you want to discuss any of this stuff in further detail than just the comment section of these videos. And you can check out my Instagram if you just want to see what kind of stuff I'm up to every now and then. But that's going to do it for this week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.